It seemed to me that the Aboriginal members of the committee were part of the scene. They were very self-confident, angry, and very expressive about this hotbed of politics. It wasn't just about law. Early in 1970, I went to a conference in Melbourne on alcohol and Aborigines, and I met for the first time Gary Foley, who I could probably say was a New South Wales Aboriginal radical leader. He encouraged me to come to Sydney. I was in Canberra at the time at the Australian National University as a student, and I cut short my studies and moved my family back to a job at the Foundation for Aboriginal Affairs. In Gary's explanation of what was happening in Sydney was firstly an idea that Aboriginal affairs was sort of in the hands of mainly Christian conservatives, and that he was glad that I was coming to the Foundation, and he said that he'd like me to come to see what was happening with this new legal organisation of white lawyers and Aboriginal radicals. There I met people like Hal Wooten, who was the chairperson of this committee, or the council as he called it. Gary, Paul Coe, Gary Williams and Tony Curry. On the legal side of things, there were people like Paul Lander, who was a committee member. And of course, they came in at different times. Sometimes there would be other new members, but generally there were always about 5 to 6 lawyers, a couple of people from the Faculty of Law at the University of New South Wales, people like Selwyn Houseman, Eddie Newman, and other lawyers that were supporting Hal in this venture. I was impressed with the way in which they dealt with things, not just because I was an apparatchik, but because it seemed to me that the Aboriginal members of the committee were part of the scene. They were very self-confident, angry, and very expressive about this hotbed of politics. It wasn't just about law. As the legal service developed, I was employed as the field officer. Anne Weldon was appointed the secretary, and a man by the name of, a lawyer, white lawyer, by the name of David Collins was appointed as a solicitor. Well, they certainly did a good job here, because when we did go into the shop front, it was painted. There were new furniture in there. There was an office for Anne. There was an office for David Collins, and a small office out the back for me. It was all painted with white paint, and it looked the part. And so we started off having a meeting in David's room. I think we had morning tea there. He'd brought some cake in, and we actually sat around designing things that we would do. Things like the filing system. He instructed us on the problems of people's privacy, that sometimes we would be asked to leave the office, and this we took as read, and we started our project off by me organising daily visits to the Long Bay Jail to actually do sometimes Saturday mornings, for example. We would go to Central in the city, Central lockup there. But the judges, the magistrates, let me talk about the person themselves and make arrangements for lawyers to follow up the work that I'd done. They didn't, I didn't take the court cases, but I was there to get the information and allowed to talk to the prisoners. Well, my attitudes were not the best in the world at that time, since police were something of an antagonism to me and other Aboriginal people. What I did was to get the magistrate's attention and indicate that we were an organisation that was doing what we set out to do, provide free legal services to Aborigines, and he allowed me to talk to the prisoners and make a date for a lawyer attached to us. I mean, I was no expert on how the law worked and so forth, but gradually I picked the point up that people had to get in touch with their relatives. That was my job. People had to have contact with the outside world, either because they'd just come in or because they were going to come out shortly. Well, it worked mainly by lawyers offering their services through Hal's job of letting his fraternity know that we'd opened our doors, that we had an address in Redfern. It was now called the Redfern Aboriginal Legal Service, and that the lawyers could put their names down for like a roster that was, on the one hand, preparing lawyers to deal with Aboriginal people on the weekends, and also as a way of those lawyers offering services in bigger cases, not just summary offences cases. So the lawyers themselves were fashioning a system that enhanced their reach, their civil rights and legal reach in the process, and the Aboriginal people, on the other hand, were getting into the minds of the lawyers about broadening their view of the needs that Aboriginal people had. It wasn't just the conflict with the police, it was conflict with the nation and their lands that they wanted back. David's appeal was a legal appeal. It wasn't a race relations question. All he was asked, and this is hearsay, all he was inquired about was his interest in the prospect of dealing with Aborigines. What would he feel like? Would he be confident offering free services to people, and also knowing that these people were coming to him with wider problems than simply, look, please be in court, please meet me out front court and get me off the charges that were put on me. So this was something, and fantastically, David fell into the job very easily. And I remember distinctly a family that David met through Mum Shirley Smith. Shirley rang David one late night, about 8 o'clock at night. She was afraid that the people involved in the arrest of these young Aboriginal boys, whom she actually contacted through their mothers. The mother was frightened that the police were going to bash these boys. and Shirley contacted David before me, and David responded very quickly. He went into Erskineville, he went into the home, he talked to the mother, he talked to the boy in a secret location, fearful that the police would bash him if, not him, but the client. And David went from the boy's home to the Redfern police station, and he was then arrested. But he was very careful that he didn't want his clients knocked around, and that was something that impressed both me, the council, and many other Aboriginal people who knew him. He was very close to people after a fairly short time. In the early days, when Paul Coe and Gary Foley met Hal Wooten, he actually took them. Paul took them out bush to get a feeling of what it was like, the conflict and the derision between Aborigines and white people. The prototype migration program, the European program, where people were sort of shipped in by big luxury boats, those are things. Nothing was like that for Aborigines. That save up their pittances to get a ticket from the local railway station and come for hundreds of miles. Broken Hill, for example, Walgett, Wilmaringle, names that a lot of white people never ever heard of. They'd come in and go start a new life, just like the poor from Europe who went to America, South America, those sorts of places. This is what it was like for people. They come in with not cases but big sort of rag bags of clothing and things that they'd got from the reserves. No shoes, they were bare feet, old coats that their mothers had left them or put on them when they were walking out the mission gate or the reserve gate. It was a real epic. And not only that, but the population went from a small group of people in Sydney and in La Perouse to thousands of people who come in by... And this was a phenomenon which lots of people didn't really realise. And the police had not realised. They just thought that these people were just like everyone else, that the law was equal. And the law is not equal. The law is never equal. The legal services did grow, and a lot of good white lawyers were responsible for that, sure. But the thing is that history was being made. It wasn't a pretty one, and it wasn't an easy one, but it did grow had an outgrowth of all those young kids and those lawyers with the compassion. Worked very hard for a number of years. They put new ideas up, like having a regional structure, and that regional structure started a war amongst Aboriginal people themselves. People who hadn't had any resources were presented with a new idea, a source of power, the kind of source of power that Paul Coe was generating in the mind of his followers, his colleagues, as well as Hal Wooten. So it was materialising. I mean, I can remember coming back to the scene as a public servant in the 1980s when the land rights movement was being nurtured by many of the people in the legal services, both here in New South Wales and in Queensland and other states, so that nationalism had come by way of this source of intellectual activity.